Julian dragged himself to the breakfast table looking drained, and every face in the room, except Evelyn's, was grim. Last night, in front of every guest, Vance had scooped Chloe into his arms and left the party. Vance hadn't come home all night. Catherine stole a cautious glance at Evelyn. She still resented her daughter-in-law's failure to conceive and rather liked sunny little Chloe, but seeing her son walk in so disheveled triggered an automatic stab of maternal guilt. Evelyn herself was perfectly composed. Ignoring the state of his clothes, she pulled out her chair, set a fresh sheath of divorce papers and a Mont Blanc pen on the linen tablecloth, and slid both across to Julian. Panic swept the room. Richard and Catherine burst into overlapping explanations. Julian's exhaustion vanished and Vance jumped up, frantically talking over them. Before we continue, please subscribe to this channel and tell us in the comments where you're listening from. Evelyn, listen, nothing happened last night, I swear. That's right, dear, you two grew up together, you know his character. Vance is soft-hearted, Vance never crossed the line. Evelyn, don't worry, Dad will make Julian give you a proper account. Vance can be reckless, but Vance would never betray you. Evelyn smiled calmly. Sit down, Dad, Mom. I'm not angry, and this isn't impulsive. It's a rational decision. When the clamor subsided, she turned back to Julian, who sat hunched, brows knitted, and sighed softly. Julian, we've known each other since childhood. I want the best for you. And the older I get, the slimmer my chances of conceiving. I'm asking you to think this through rationally. At the word conceiving, Richard and Catherine exchanged a look and swallowed whatever else they had meant to say. Evelyn was right, infertility was a brutal, practical problem. Both families, mindful of old business ties, had tiptoed around it for months. That she now raised it herself felt almost merciful. Julian started to protest again. Evelyn lifted a hand. Take time to decide. We'll live apart for a while. Call me when you've thought it through. She went upstairs, carried her suitcase down, and left. Catherine instantly began whispering in Julian's ear. His head reeled, and she quietly messaged Chloe to keep being there. In the end, Julian agreed to the divorce. The outcome surprised Evelyn not at all. From the first moment she'd heard him say Chloe, she'd felt a small, decisive click, like a lock snapping shut. Even then Vance had always frowned when Vance mentioned the girl, always complained, yet a woman's instinct told Evelyn the marriage had an expiration date. While Julian showered, she drew out the divorce agreement drafted before the wedding, its edges already yellowing, and ran a thumb over the paper. Their union resembled it, fragile, brittle, ready to crumble at a touch. Time bred affection, and time also killed it. Theirs had been a corporate marriage between childhood frenemies long ago paired off by laughing parents. At first Evelyn had felt little for Julian, she was too pragmatic, but affection had grown through the years of shared pillows and shared boardrooms. Because reason governed her life, they had pre-signed papers to keep a future divorce from turning two powerful clans into open enemies. Julian had sulked about it for weeks. Now her foresight felt prophetic. She didn't file immediately. Gossip would label her hysterical, and, though she cared nothing for gossip, wrangling struck her as tedious. Instead she began a quiet withdrawal, relocating her life one toothbrush at a time. Pain? Of course. Years in the same bed had seeded real tenderness, but tenderness, like water, could evaporate or find new courses. She neither blamed nor hated him. Her father had given her a two-bed condo downtown as a 21st birthday present, premarital property. She ferried her belongings over after work. Julian never noticed. The first crack of light broke on a day when menstrual cramps collapsed her in the nightwear office. Derek, her boss, only 3 in the company, carried her to the ER. They were a boutique outfit. Vance and roommate Shane coded and hustled for contracts. Evelyn kept the books, paid bills, and ordered snacks. She had accepted the CFO title mainly to amuse herself after Julian suggested she get a hobby, to stop obsessing over babies. Derek was the archetypal tech monomaniac, uncombed hair, hoodie, world reduced to algorithms. While Evelyn slept off painkillers, Vance tried her phone repeatedly. Julian never answered. So Vance folded his lanky frame into a plastic chair and scowled at the chart. When Evelyn woke, she almost laughed, the great coder defeated by a hospital vigil. But the comedy curdled when, trailing Derek down the corridor, they met Julian escorting Chloe, white t-shirt, jeans, high ponytail, dimples flashing. Evelyn's mirror showed a pale executive suit. No wonder middle-aged husbands veered toward girls who looked like summer camp. She introduced herself with a cool smile. Just menstrual cramps. I brought her for a twisted ankle. Julian stammered. I have to get back. Work. She pointed at Derek's impatient hulk and trotted after him. Julian followed. You're her boss? I'm her husband. She should go home. Derek kept walking. Julian frowned but pivoted when Chloe yelped from the waiting room. Evelyn watched him sprint away, then climbed into Derek's car. Sorry for wasting your time. Feel free to clock out whenever you hurt, Vance muttered. She beamed. Thank you. A week later Chloe arrived at the Sterling estate bearing baskets of macarons. Catherine greeted her like a daughter Evelyn had never managed to become. Thereafter Chloe floated through the mansion most evenings. Evelyn stayed late at Lakeside. One night Catherine's birthday buffet brimmed with champagne and gossip. Chloe accidentally collided with Evelyn, sending red wine cascading down her own blouse and sprawling AC. Ross the marble. Julian burst in, threw his tux jacket over Chloe, scooped her up, and carried her upstairs. The crowd twittered. Evelyn's smile stayed diplomatic even as two impacts twisted her ankle. She limped to the powder room, locked the door, and watched the scene broadcast from a security cam on her phone. Chloe's arms tied around Julian's neck, her kiss landing on the corner of his mouth while Vance turned away, too slowly. Vance did not come home. At dawn Evelyn retrieved the yellowed agreement, printed a fresh copy, and packed the last of her clothes. She accepted Julian's consent text with the same calm she once brought to mergers. Yet when she stepped under the condo shower, she let hot water disguise tears whose existence perplexed her. No audience watched this performance. The doorbell rang, DoorDash lobster rolls. She opened to find the delivery kid and, across the hall, Derek fumbling with his biometric safe. Divorced, she offered, pointing at her doorway. Premarital asset. Neighbors, who knew? Why aren't you at work? Was his reply. Mental health day. Approved. She grinned, a straight-line male brain could be oddly restful. A week later she returned to nightwear to discover chaos. Two code cowboys ankle-deep in empty energy drink cans and, gurgling in a playpen, a 1-year-old toddler whose sudden arrival would reset every equation Evelyn thought she had solved. Only when she asked did she learn that Derek's ex-wife was getting remarried. The groom-to-be refused to let her bring the child, so the boy had been sent back. Shane, that woman's brutal. She never even told Derek she was pregnant. Now, ping, a kid drops out of the sky, and Derek just takes him in. Who even knows if it's his? Evelyn, ever the gossip, whispered, why did they divorce? If she went through the pregnancy, why split afterward? Shane, who knows? Maybe Derek's equipment fizzles. Derek, who had been rocking the toddler, turned with a frown. She left because I was broke. Evelyn, come on. Your company is small, but you own a condo downtown. How broke can you be? Derek, my parents bought that after the divorce. Evelyn, then why don't they explain to her that you're not poor anymore? Derek, no idea. Evelyn pressed 2 fingers to her temples. Vance deserved the divorce. The thought nudged her own wound. Even a straight arrow nerd felt pain, and a playboy felt a different kind. Both left bruises. The toddler's howls escalated, drowning her self-pity. None of the 3 adults had child experience. Chaos reigned until Evelyn mixed formula and popped the bottle into the baby's mouth. She was, after all, the only person in the nightwear office who owned common sense. The cooling-off period was 1 month. After the first wretched week, thanks to Derek's son, she spent every remaining day mopping up spills and timing naps. And Derek's brain definitely did not run on normal circuitry. Because she had quieted the baby once, the child became her new assignment, 24/7. Vance announced it with perfect logic, you can make him stop crying. Evelyn's mental ticker scrolled expletives, but she actually liked kids, and Derek never quibbled over her workload. Taking pity on his warped wiring, she accepted the mission. On the final day of the cooling-off period Derek and Shane had client meetings, so Evelyn carried the little guy to the Civic Affairs Bureau. At the sight of the baby Julian's brows snapped together, displeasure sharp. Whose child? A friend's. Vance's tied up and couldn't bring him. Julian kept scowling. None of her friends had a child this age, or had she built a life Vance knew nothing about? The idea gnawed, she had already tired of him. Perhaps, why else would she look so unruffled while signing divorce papers when even the betrayer felt scraps of nostalgia? Just then the drowsy toddler chirped. Mama. Evelyn lit up. Sweetie, did you just say mama? You think I'm your mama? She missed Julia N's ashen face, busy tickling the boy while queuing for their number. Julian's chest caved at the image of her future child calling her mama, never him dad. Vance opened his mouth to stall her, but his phone rang. Chloe's sugary greeting floated through. She already spoke like his girlfriend and Vance had let her. Vance cleared his throat, rising and moving away. Evelyn lowered her lashes. never once looking at him, yet each shallow breath reminded her she cared. The baby twisted, gifting her a gummy grin, tiny comforter, so she hugged him close. By the time Julian returned she was seated at window 3, still playing with the child, gaze averted. Words of regret balanced on his tongue, then slipped off. Outside, Julian offered a ride, she smiled the same hospital day refusal. No need, his dad's picking us up. She meant only that Derek had texted Vance was nearby, but the sentence stabbed Julian's ears. Your friend's a man? Evelyn glanced up, bewildered. Am I barred from male friends? Derek's SUV glided in. Knowing Vance sometimes created social static, Vance hopped out and opened the door for her. They were never formal. The casual ease looked, to Julian, like a perfect family photo, 3 matching puzzle pieces. The sight burned. In the driver's seat Vance exhaled, unsure whether Vance just made the biggest mistake. Vance had loved her, their wedding had been the happiest day of his life. Somehow the threads between them thinned while Chloe kept popping into his thoughts. Nothing had happened the night of his mother's birthday, but Chloe's confession had cracked the stalemate. Vance had to choose. Vance hadn't wanted to, the old balance had felt fine. Inside the car Evelyn rode in silence, the baby asleep in her arms, her own defenses finally lowering. Derek glanced over several times, said nothing, and simply drove her home. Why are we here? The office must be swamped, she murmured. Bringing you back first. I'll head out after. A small smile. The workahol. Icy's greatest tenderness was this deviation from code. She carried the toddler inside. Derek saw them to the room before leaving. She'd expected weeks of heartbreak, but new projects and a new human filled the hours too fully for prolonged grieving. The next time she met Julian was in the hospital, this time Derek was the patient. Vance worked until Vance crashed from low blood sugar. Shane delivered him, confirmed no crisis, then rushed back to code. Evelyn stayed. Julian arrived with Chloe. Evelyn nodded, no small talk, and slipped past. Vance tried to speak but Chloe's fingers tightened on his arm, trapping the words in his throat. Chloe, also low on glucose, shared the drip room with Derek. Evelyn felt zero awkwardness, only relief that exiting a relationship could be this simple. One flash of panic, then calm. Face things, running feeds them. When Derek woke, Evelyn sat beside him, juggling his son on her lap, switching arms, using her knees as props. Vance reached out immediately. Let me take him. Vance'll bawl if I put him down, she whispered, almost like a wife complaining to her husband. Julian's stomach twisted, she used to speak that way to him, now Vance rated only indifference. Derek sat up, lifted the boy, swung his legs off the bed. Lie down for a bit. I'm not the patient, she laughed. Your back's sore. Rest. We'll go home when the bag's empty. She obeyed. Pragmatic Derek wouldn't lounge if code waited, and holding a toddler while horizontal is impossible, so she commandeered the mattress. We'll go home. Julian's fist clenched at the phrase, but Chloe tugged his hand, burrowing into his chest, and the protest leaked out of him. They were divorced, she was beyond his jurisdiction. Regret arrived too late. Derek yanked his own needle, one-armed the baby, and offered Evelyn his free hand. She took it automatically. She walked slowly, Vance strode, so the recent routine, baby on one hip, Evelyn on the other, saved minutes without romance. Eve. Lynn. Julian sprang up. We need to talk. Derek's grip tightened, they were on a schedule, so Evelyn answered over her shoulder, message me. We're kind of busy. Julian lurched forward, but Chloe caught him, delicate face upturned. Julian, don't leave me. I'm scared. Vance sank back. Code Night 3, Night 2 has blown a diaper bomb again. Grimace, grimace, grimace. When Julian saw the message pop up on Derek's laptop, his breathing clogged. Subordinates don't ping bosses like that, do they? Derek frowned at Shane. Take over. I'll head home. Julian, so this is Nightware's idea of priority? Vance knew Vance was being petty. Vance funneled the Sterling's new operating system build to Derek's startup just to keep a filament linking him to Evelyn. Last week at a charity auction Vance bumped into her parents. They already knew about the divorce, offered no blame, only the same neutral courtesy she'd shown, like strangers on separate riverbanks. Vance should accept the current, yet 7 years couldn't evaporate overnight. If buying a window into her world cost a 7-figure contract, the price felt almost fair. Derek's brows stayed knitted while Vance watched Julian in silence for several seconds. Are you actually sincere about working with us? My showing up at all today should count as good faith. Vance was never eloquent, but that didn't mean Vance was clueless. Julian's mind was clearly elsewhere. Nightwear might be small, but it wasn't desperate enough to barter an employee's private life for a contract. With that, Derek spun on his heel and left without a backward glance. His son was no easy child, Vance knew that. Evelyn's heart had been in every diaper change, every late-night bottle, and ever since the two coder dads took over the messy parts the toddler still only calmed for her. Lately the kid had grown wilier. Vance worked out exactly how to twist them and wouldn't tolerate the smallest slight. But through Julian's eyes the scene looked very different. To him, Derek and Evelyn were already the picture of a glued-at-the-hip young couple. The wife who hands the baby to her husband the moment she's overwhelmed, the husband who steps in without a word. Julian had seen them together once before, and the memory fermented into vinegar. Had they been an item all along? Was that why Evelyn hadn't batted an eye when Chloe appeared, and why she'd raced through the divorce so cleanly, so single-mindedly? The thought blazed in his chest, his face turned thunder black. Shane, stuck on the sofa, felt the deal evaporate but couldn't just bolt. Finally Julian reeled himself in. Vance couldn't let Derek's exit slam the last door. This project might be the only thread still tying him to Evelyn. Sorry, something urgent just came up. Let's schedule another round on the cooperation details. Of course. We won't disturb you any further, Sterling. Goodbye. The instant Shane was back in the nightwear office, Vance cornered Evelyn. What exactly is your history with Julian? Why would Sterling pitch us a partnership out of the blue? At first Vance assumed Derek's parents had pulled strings, until Vance saw the color drain from Julian's face the moment Evelyn's message popped up on Derek's phone. Why couldn't it be Derek the third who knows him? Please. Derek and I are childhood frenemies. Vance doesn't even know Julian exists. Never overestimate us men. Evelyn wiggled her fingers mysteriously. Shane slapped them away. Cut the act. What's the deal? After Vance read your iMessage to Derek, wow, the guy looked like Vance swallowed ink. She beamed. My ex-husband. Shane's jaw dropped. You did that on purpose. She pressed an index finger to her lips, glanced over her shoulder, and found Derek scowling at them. Shane snickered. Old night, stay away from women from now on. Derek said nothing, simply plopped the toddler into Evelyn's arms and went back to his keyboard. Evelyn pouted. It's no big deal, is it? Little Night 2? Little Night 2 was her private nickname for the boy. On paper Vance was Yanshu Knight, too grown-up sounding. She wanted something childish. Since her own name carried one, she dubbed him 2, bumping Derek to third place. Across the room Derek's peripheral vision caught her baby talking. Vance didn't contradict her, merely dived into code. The next day Julian, still not resigned, showed up at Lakeside. Nightwear occupied a single glass cubicle, but the tower sat prime downtown. Derek's eyebrows slammed together the moment Vance spotted their visitor. Had Vance not been clear yesterday? Evelyn merely lifted a brow, thinking, classic. When I was his wife Vance filled his head with another woman. Once I'm not, Vance can't stay away. Little Night 2 sensed the tension and burst into wails in his father's arms. Evelyn strolled over. She wasn't the birth mom, yet only she could hush him. These days the kid was getting heavy. When Vance wasn't crying she let Derek do the literal lifting, strapping the toddler to his chest so keyboard clatter could double as white noise. She undid the carrier with practiced ease. What's wrong this time, huh? Magic. The tears stopped, giggles bubbled up. Derek said nothing. Vance waved Julian toward the office's lone couch while Shane brought tea. Derek sat, expecting Julian to speak first, but the man's gaze was glued to Evelyn. Ahem. I thought I was clear yesterday, Derek said. Julian lowered his eyes. When Vance lifted them again they were frosty. My sincerity toward nightwear is real. Are you saying Sterling isn't good enough for you? Not at all. A Sterling contract could feed us for years. I'm happy, in principle. But no side conditions. Julian's smile was thin. Painfully blunt, this Derek. No wonder his code sold yet his margins limped. Serves him right. Naturally, I've nothing to attach. M.O. Outline our requirements. Yes, sir. A young tech director stepped forward. To align with Ma. Get demand, Sterling. Julian yielded his seat, strolled to Evelyn's side. You're quite the nanny. Yeah. Shame I can't make one of my own. Her tone stayed friendly, but the words stabbed. If only she had conceived, they might never have reached divorce papers. Even if Vance strayed, his parents would have clung to her. Vance and Chloe weren't married, yet she'd moved into the Sterling estate. Within days Catherine had complained. The girl tried, but she left belongings everywhere, whereas Evelyn had kept the mansion like a museum. Catherine sang those praises to Chloe's face. Julian had stayed mum, increasingly aware of what Vance discarded. Have you seen another doctor? Is your body still? Evelyn shrugged. We're divorced. Why keep torturing myself? The apology jammed in Julian's throat. I didn't know you hated hospitals. I thought you wanted the treatments too. Don't apologize. I'm the faulty one, not you. Vance almost said Vance could live without children, but the word air crushed his airway. 1 second of hesitation was enough. Derek's voice cracked across the room. Need you over here to scope Mo's specs, we'll cost them afterward. Evelyn cocked a brow. She moonlighted as finance lead, yet budgets had always been Shane's turf. Still, she carried the toddler over and sat beside Derek. Little Knight too rewarded his dad with a toothy grin. Then, shock, Derek leaned in to kiss the boy's forehead. Because the child was still in Evelyn's arms, the gesture brushed her skin, she froze at the featherlight contact. Shane's eyes flickered, Vance fought a grin. Vance and Derek had shared diapers themselves, no one read Derek's micro-expressions better. Julian took a half step forward before Derek straightened and met his stare, and only sheer will halted Julian in place. His pulse hammered, Vance couldn't lose her, couldn't stand the mental movie of her marrying someone else. That single flash of intimacy forced him to face the truth. Vance wasn't brave enough to watch the girl Vance loved since adolescence belong to another man. Evelyn caught the agony in Julian's eyes and laughed silently. How ironic, his look of betrayal mirrored Chloe's the day she'd kissed him. Vance still thought of her as property, imagined she'd committed adultery by letting a man kiss the child in her arms. After the Sterling delegation left, the office air congealed. Evelyn escaped home with the toddler. Once she was gone, Shane teased. Derek stayed mute, ears flaming. The awkwardness dissolved fast. Her phone pinged with Derek's message. A guy who won't take his wife's calls but drives another woman to the hospital isn't worth a backward glance. Cryptic, but she knew Vance was branding Julian's hypocrisy, and that the forehead kiss had been for Julian's benefit, a way to torch any idea of reclaiming lost ground. Little Knight too, your dad may be a plank of wood, but Vance's got hidden grooves. The boy chortled, drool shining, and Evelyn laughed with him. In the end, Derek formally declined Sterling's offer. Shane needled him. Why? They were throwing money. Don't tell me it was for Evelyn. Derek's frown never lifted, only the scarlet ears betrayed him. Vance wasn't sincere. Gets messy later. Such a prude. Shane laughed and let it ride. Love, after all, is a do-it-yourself project. Of course, staging a grand hero avenges his beauty scene still carries a price. Julian began leaning on every contact Vance had to blacklist Derek along Riverdale's business circuit. When the news reached Evelyn, she gave a cold laugh, pivoted on her heel, and lifted Derek's chin with one finger. Don't worry. I'll sort it out. No need. Vance ducked away from her finger, brows knitted. Vance was in no mood for gallantry. Plotting and scheming had never been his strong suit. In the past, Vance'd been the one bullied, the one who never decoded the invisible rulebook of favor trading. The only countermeasure Vance knew was to retreat and code harder, to level himself up in solitude. Yet there was a second reason for his gloom, and her name was Evelyn. Vance had assumed she would go back to Julian, beg for mercy on Nightware's behalf. The thought nauseated him. Even if every last project crumbled under Julian's boot, Vance didn't want her sacrificing her pride, or any sliver of her private feelings, to fix this mess for him. Evelyn squeezed his jaw and tilted his face back to her. What's that face? Think being rescued by a woman is humiliating? Not at all. Then quit looking as though you're swallowing bitter glass. You still don't know Julian. The Sterling is a centurion oak, deep roots, thick bark. Heir or not, Julian was bred the golden boy. Every elder in Riverdale has placed his future in their wills. If Vance wants us choked, Vance just closes his fist. Derek finally met her eyes straight on, but the stare carried sparks, not gratitude. From the corner of the playmat, Shane, apparently busy soothing the toddler, caught every micro-expression. Vance wasn't fretting for the company's future. Vance entertained only one thought: romance. In his personal commentary box, Derek's temper spiked because Evelyn had praised Julian. Shane had watched Derek lose Iris for this very reason, feelings translated by no one, voiced to no one, and Vance wondered if Evelyn would be more patient. If she weren't, Shane would remain the last lone bachelor at Nightware. If she were, well, Quiet Genius CEO and Ice Queen CFO sounded like a ship Vance was willing to captain from the sidelines. You plan to negotiate? And if Julian demands a remarriage, his mind supplied, what then? Vance lowered his lashes, the question too filthy to voice, ears bright red from the imagined impropriety. Naturally, I won't. Her voice ran soft, yet the resolve was alpine water, cool enough to cut summer heat. Whether she answered the question spoken or the one caged behind his teeth, she didn't clarify. Remember, I've been his wife. The Vance family is perfectly capable of strong marrying strong. In Riverdale our name is no lighter than Sterling's. That was why, through 7 years of barren wedlock, Catherine had never given her public spite. The balance sheet of their two dynasties still showed equal weight. Derek's complexion finally eased. Shane strolled over with the toddler balanced on his hip. Look at our prize recruit, brilliant with spreadsheets, crack baby whisperer, and now corporate dragon slayer. Old Derek here hit the damn trifecta. Vance nudged Derek's shoulder, but Derek offered no retort. Facts don't care about sarcasm, and the ledger tonight said profit. Still, Vance snuck a glance at Evelyn to see whether she'd take offense. Evelyn felt none, just an internal flutter she chose not to inspect. She had divorced mere months ago and had zero plans to rebound, yet, like Shane, she discovered she enjoyed the neon ambiguity of maybe coloring the air again. After the previous contracts evaporated, Derek seldom showed up at the nightwear office. Vance spent his days coding from home and parenting the tiny dictator called, toddler nickname preserved. One morning Evelyn arrived early, scooped the still sleeping child from his bed, and vanished. When she reappeared at dusk, she brandished a municipal RFP stamped urgent. Only then did Derek's pulse truly settle, because the document certified she had not knelt to Julian. Little joy bubbles rose in his chest as Vance reached for the boy. You took him to a pitch meeting? Evelyn, sipping water, shook her head. Nope. Took him home. She leaned in deliberately, eyes alight with mischief. I told Dad my son's dad was in crisis. Vance laughed, said I didn't even have a son. I promised to produce the evidence and struck a deal, meet the boy, bankroll the rescue. Truth, merely condensed. During the actual visit she'd sobbed rivers. Julian was bullying my new man, layered every praise on Derek, and painted July Ian as the consummate heir who went straight back to sucking the parental trust fund. Her parents doubted the overnight boyfriend, yet biology was a crueler story. Their daughter would likely never carry a child. If the new partner already owned a toddler, one huge obstacle might be cleared. So they indulged the performance of meeting their grandson. The kid cooperated, mama all day, not a single whimper, clearly accustomed to Evelyn's arms. The elders believed 8/10 of the tale and decided, whether romance existed yet or not, they would bankroll this boy's future to spite the Sterlings. When Julian heard, rage flared, not because Derek survived the siege, but because Evelyn had activated her own bloodline for aid. That meant recognition. The Vance elders were sober investors. If they stepped in, either profit lay on the table, or family did. Nightwear's microscopic valuation bored them, so, by elimination, they already counted Derek as in-laws. A hand made of frost clenched Julian's heart until white sparks burst behind his eyelids. Enter Chloe, nightly ritual in hand, a mug of warm milk, care and Q rolled into one. Late, time for bed. Instead she found Julian slumped over the desk. One slipper flew off as she scurried, her bare toes, pale against the lacquered red floor, looked edible, the very picture of fragile devotion Vance once mistook for soulmate material. Ahung, what happened? Talk to me, please. Vance stared at those toes and hated them. Like the rest of her, they were scenery Vance no longer wished to examine. Maybe she did love him, but love ranked low in the Sterling syllabus, lower than the void Evelyn might now be filling with that awkward coder. They had grown up shoulder to shoulder yet she had never wanted him. Could she really burn for a bespectacled robot? Vance refused the script. Vance would not lose to such an opponent. Vance lifted his head. The look Vance shot her was reserved for corpses. Chloe swallowed her sob mid-brea. Scared of me? Vance said, retreating step by step. Aren't you in love? Why the terror? Where's the concern now? Speak. Speak. Volume escalated to a roar. She collapsed, palms over ears, having no clue why the gentle tutor who once cleaned up her rookie mistakes had mutated into this animal. Richard and Catherine arrived at the clamor. Richard did an about-face at the doorway. Catherine's brows crashed together. Chloe, in a lace baby doll nightie, now crouched so low her briefs winked crimson at the ceiling. In a house where 3 generations still shared floors, the wardrobe choice was strategic artillery aimed below the belt. What's all the howling? And what are you wearing? A Sterling daughter-in-law comports herself. You flouncin' like a sale rack mistress, cheap, unpresentable. Terror plus humiliation opened the floodgate, tears puddled beside Julian's leather slippers. Quit that mewling. Catherine's voice cracked like a whip. Ever since this girl moved in, harmony had gone missing. Now she dared cry? She had fractured another woman's marriage, yet played the wounded fawn. Julian surfaced from the red fog under his mother's cannonade. Words formed, none passed his lips. Logically Vance knew fault branched everywhere, but emotion demanded a scapegoat. Watching her break granted him oxygen. Mom, it's late. Go to bed. Catherine skewered her son with one last glare, found no second target, and left with a sniff. Chloe lifted her face, mascara rivers striping her cheeks, hoping for tenderness. Julian stepped around her without a downward glance and exited the study. Deliberate. Vance understood every twitch of her script, had always understood, and tonight refused the encore. She would pay the bill for his pain, that felt like justice. When Iris came to see her child, she was stunned. In barely a year Derek had somehow landed on his feet. Not only did Vance now own a two-bed condo downtown, but the interior looked professionally designed. Every lamp and throw pillow suggesting that whoever lived here actually enjoyed being alive. The Derek she remembered was a workaholic who treated daily life like an interruption. Sometimes she'd wondered if Vance even needed a marriage. Vance already contained an entire universe within himself. Worst of all was his stubbornness. She had once tried to fix him, and the campaign ended in the usual stalemate, both of them walking away angry. The moment Iris disappeared into the next unit, Evelyn began pacing the living room with her arms folded, circling like a restless cat, ducking to the peephole every third lap. Why is she still in there? You glance at a kid and you're done. Two grown exes alone, nothing good can come from that. But on paper she was only Derek's employee, she had no right to barge in and stage a catfight. Oddly, back in the Chloe days she hadn't even wanted to fight, she'd only wanted to flee the whole miserable house. Now she itched to storm across the hall, fold her arms like the rightful mistress, and stare Iris down until regret twisted the woman's face. All of it played out in her head, because in reality Iris felt zero remorse. She was merely surprised at the upgraded surroundings. The man himself sat there hugging his laptop, never even sparing her a look. The silence felt like a couple married 30 years, magnetic fields so flat no spark could jump. The weight of it made Iris's lungs ache. Her new life was predictable, sure, but at least when she stepped through her own door she and her husband talked, bickered, breathed the same air instead of drowning in this hush. Little Knight, now legally Knight Schwang and listed on Derek's household register, could toddle and had learned to recognize people. Confronted with his birth mother, the toddler who had already seen the world showed neither fear nor the clinging affection Iris had fantasized about. A sour ache rose in her. While coaxing a smile from the boy she croaked, "I'm pregnant AG. Ein." Derek's fingers paused above the keys for half a heartbeat, then the clatter resumed. Vance honestly didn't get why she was reporting this. Remarried and expecting was normal, no longer his business, certainly not news. Iris gave a soft, bitter laugh. Of course Vance didn't understand. This would probably be her last visit. Her new husband, a first-time groom, disapproved of these trips, and once their own baby arrived the door would close for good. Still, seeing the boy healthy and cared for dulled the guilt that had gnawed at her. She stayed through dinner and left only after every last second of small talk had been squeezed dry. By the time her heels clicked down the corridor Evelyn was numb, sitting cross-legged on a dining chair pretending to meditate, mind racing through every ugly scenario she had invented. She heard Iris leave but didn't budge. She was angry, irrationally, unfairly angry. If anything had happened she had no right to protest, yet rage pulsed behind her eyes anyway. So the next morning she left for the nightwear office without waiting for Derek and the toddler, and once at her desk she treated him like any other founder. When Knight Schwang tottered over she delivered a deranged one-woman show. "Oh, how adorable. How old are you? Want candy?" As though she'd never rocked him to sleep or changed his diapers. Derek and Shane gaped. Had she amnesia? She'd raised this kid, why was she acting like a first-day intern? Derek fared no better. "Understood, President Knight. President Knight, what are your instructions?" "I'll prepare that right away, President Knight." "Thank you, President Knight." "President Knight, you have a call on line 2. Shane drifted over, elbowing Derek. "Bro, what did you do?" "She's channeling the ghost of passive aggression." Derek frowned. "We haven't seen each other since Friday. Thought you two were basically cohabiting." Derek flushed. "Not exactly." After a hiss of warning Vance recounted Iris's I sit. Shane clicked his tongue. Classic case of jealousy. The word lit Derek like a searchlight. Vance bombarded Shane for clarification, and the ever-helpful CTO laid out a crash course in human female psychology plus one harebrained remedy. Derek had never found Shane so reliable. When Evelyn headed to the restroom, Vance met Shane's gaze, nodded, and followed. Night Shuang tried to toddle after them, but Shane scooped him up. Mom and Dad need a conference. You get to audit my code review. The boy accepted the promotion without protest. All morning Evelyn had been mentally cursing Derek, no call, no text, nothing. Was she a volunteer nanny? She had invested too much to walk away empty-handed. Even if the man slipped through her fingers, the boy would damn well call her godmother. Lost in that internal rant, she felt her wrist caught and she was towed into the stairwell. Derek pinned her against the wall, forearms bracketing her head. Her lungs seized. So this was why romance novels sold. Every sensible neuron melted. What are you doing? Are you mad? You've frozen me out all day. No idea what you mean. The romantic haze evaporated, dense as ever. She was framing the word clueless when Vance kissed her, hard. Her brain blue screamed. This did not compute. You never came over yesterday, Vance murmured against her lips. Huh? Evelyn stared, eyes glassy. Derek swallowed, thumb stroking her cheek, and bent for another taste just as the door banged open. A neighboring accountant stepped out, cigarette in hand, froze, and began bowing like a malfunctioning toy. Sorry, go on, please. Derek shuffled, toe scuffing tile, fingers pressed to his mouth. Evelyn exhaled first. Stop squirming. We're divorce veterans, not teenagers. She brushed past. Vance followed like a scolded Labrador. So, not angry anymore? Depends. What was that kiss for? Meant, I like you. She finally cracked a smile. Vance mirrored it dopily. Then why 0 messages yesterday? I vanished and you didn't notice? I noticed. But I never messaged you before. Vance meant it literally. Their routine had never required texting. In the beginning Vance knocked. Later she let herself in with the fingerprint Vance programmed. Yesterday she'd watched Iris enter and talked herself out of intruding. Insecurity, pure and simple. She rubbed her brow. Fine. What exactly did you and the ex do for so long? I worked. Seriously? She kept an eye on Night Shuang. I finished the municipal RFP. Evelyn laughed, so Derek. She laced her arm through his and they strolled back to the office, officially a couple. Word traveled fast. Derek's parents flew home. Dinner was scheduled with Evelyn's family. Mid-meal Evelyn and her sister-in-law slipped to the ladies' room. Julian's getting remarried, surprise, not to Chloe. She's some girl back from grad school, 7 years younger, old family friends. Figures, the Sterlings were never letting a no-name like Chloe through the front door. Evelyn smiled, she wasn't shocked. If Julian had married Chloe and a better candidate surfaced, the ending would be the same. Men could be colder accountants than women. If Julian had truly loved Chloe'd have filed the divorce himself. Instead Vance resisted when she raised it. Yet Vance fed Chloe enough crumbs of hope to keep her dreaming. Youth, slim assets, no leverage, of course she'd lose. Didn't peg Julian as such a snake, her sister-in-law rattled on, but Derek seems solid, quiet, no sleaze. You two should have met sooner, saved you those wasted years. Evelyn let the chatter run its course, sighing inwardly. Regret? Not really. Had they met 7 years earlier they probably wouldn't have clicked. Marriages have their own seasons. She didn't resent Julian. Falling out of love wasn't a crime, hearts shift. An infertile woman being traded away was predictable, even her parents conceded the math. Right or wrong had nothing to do with it, it was simply human. The NKS for listening to today's story. If you enjoyed it, like and share with friends. We'd love to hear your take in the comments. Don't forget to subscribe for more, and we'll see you next time.